Esteemed friends and colleagues, before I begin, I would like to acknowledge that the Halifax International Security Forum is regularly hosted on the traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And because of the pandemic, I'm delivering these remarks from the traditional territory of the Algonquin peoples. To everyone in Halifax, Ottawa, and Washington, D.C., and to all who are joining us virtually from around the world, welcome to HISIF 2020. Bienvenue. I also want to thank Peter Van Praag and everyone at HISIF for their work to organize this year's event under such difficult circumstances. Now, normally, we gather at HISIF to renew our friendships, make new ones, and tackle the critical issues that keep defense and security leaders up at night. Now, this year, because of COVID-19, HISIF is going to be different. But you can still expect the same intimate and compelling discussions. The agenda includes discussions about some of the most critical issues of our time: democracy, human rights, the COVID-19 pandemic, and how the return of great power competition is affecting the world and reshaping our understanding of it. Now, here in Canada, all levels of government are working together to keep Canadians safe. And from a military perspective, the members of the Canadian Armed Forces have been helping Canadians since the very beginning. In February, they helped bring Canadians home from overseas. And by April, our forces were helping frontline healthcare workers protect our most vulnerable Canadians in more than 50 long-term care facilities in Ontario and Quebec. At the same time, the Canadian Rangers were in the remote northern and Indigenous communities providing supplies and logistical support to help keep people safe. Now, this virus knows no borders. It influences everything we do, from running errands to running a country. I do not imagine many of us in the security and defense community spent much time thinking about epidemiology before March. And now, here we all are. Experts in defense and security and international relations, climate change issues and economics, forced to see our work through the lens of a global pandemic. Now, despite the pandemic, though, the world continues to deal with other defense and security issues, some long-standing and some emerging. For all of us, our challenge remains how to understand a rapidly evolving security environment so that we can anticipate emerging threats and adapt. We know that state and non-state actors are engaged in below-threshold conflict against democratic nations. They attempt to use incremental action and disguised intent to antagonize while avoiding a meaningful response. They attempt to gain advantage across multiple domains by trying to erode our unity and exhausting our resolve. And throughout this pandemic, we have seen them seek ways of turning the crisis to their advantage. They've spread disinformation that could cause people to question the effectiveness of key global institutions, the rules-based international order, and even democracy itself. But we know that the best way forward is for countries that share the same values to work together, fostering dialogue and cooperation based on mutual respect between nations. And Canada favors a multilateral approach to problem solving. Across a range of issues, we have demonstrated a strong record of effectively convening nations, of bringing them together to discuss difficult challenges and achieving positive results. Now, that includes addressing defense and security challenges facing the international community. In particular, throughout the pandemic, we have seen allies and partners striking a necessary balance between critical needs at home and helping each other with supplies and expertise. For me, this really brought home once again the critical importance of multilateralism. Canada's position as a stable middle power means we can do more to safeguard and reinforce our partnerships that have defined global cooperation for the last 70 years. We know that these partnerships are vital to global stability and prosperity. It is why, 3 years ago, Canada launched a new defense policy, Strong, Secure, and Engaged, a 20-year roadmap to ensure our military can meet the challenges of the evolving security environment. Now, because being engaged in the world means that Canada must invest in our capabilities and increase our contributions. Though Canada has participated in every NATO mission since the alliance was founded in 1949, a track record for which we are very proud of, under the previous government, Canada's defense expenditure was around 1% of our GDP. Now that is where we started when I first gave my speech here at HISIF in 2015. With our defense policy, we are increasing our defense investments by 70%. This will ensure that our women and men in uniform have what they need to do the important work we ask of them. And with NORAD modernization, we will do even more. All around the world, Canadian Armed Forces members are doing critical work, supporting our allies and partners and upholding the rights and freedoms of the most vulnerable, often at great personal risk. It takes a particular kind of courage to put the safety of others before your own. And we will never forget Sub-Lieutenant Abigail Cobra, Sub-Lieutenant Matthew Pike, Master Corporal Matthew Cousins, Captain Maxime Miron Marin, Captain Kevin Hagan, Captain Brendan Ian MacDonald. 6 Canadian Armed Forces members who lost their lives in a helicopter crash in the Ionian Sea this year, and Captain Jennifer Casey and Corporal James Choi, who died in tragic accidents here at home. I appreciated the condolences sent by our partners and allies. Despite these tragic events and the global pandemic, Canada remains engaged in operations around the world. Last year, Canada deployed an air task force to peace support operations in Mali. We are currently in our 2nd year of tactical airlift support to United Nations mission in Africa from the United Nations Regional Service Center in Uganda. And in Europe, we have more than 800 personnel deployed on Operation Reassurance, Canada's contribution to security and deterrence measures in Central and Eastern Europe. This includes 540 Canadian Armed Forces members as part of NATO's Enhanced Forward Presence Battle Group, which we lead in Latvia. And as I speak, we have 6 CF-18 fighter jets and about 135 personnel in Romania as we participate in the enhanced air policing mission there. And in the face of unprovoked Russian aggression, Canada continues to stand with Ukraine. Members of the Canadian Armed Forces are there as part of Operation Unifier, working with Ukrainian security and defense forces to build their capabilities and capacity. Meanwhile, in the Asia-Pacific, in the face of aggressive actions by North Korea, Canada had about 240 Canadian crew members of HMCS Winnipeg and a Cyclone maritime helicopter recently deployed on Operation Neon. There, they monitored attempts to evade UN Security Council sanctions on North Korea, and it was assisted by a CP-140 Aurora Maritime Patrol Detachment based out of Japan. Now, our personnel are working with our international partners to identify and share information on suspected evasion activities, like ship-to-ship fuel transfers. And in the Middle East, we have commanded NATO Mission Iraq for 2 years to support Iraq in building more effective defense and security institutions. Canada's contributions to the global coalition against Daesh have been essential in countering Daesh and fostering security stability in the Middle East. Despite the challenges of the pandemic, we continue to work closely with our coalition partners to solidify our gains in the region. In Latin America and the Caribbean, Canada delivered thousands of kilograms of aid from the United Nations to help with pandemic relief earlier this year. And we continue advancing the women, peace, and security agenda everywhere we can, so we can improve operational effectiveness, practice what we preach, and ensure our armed forces are more representative of the societies they defend. But the only way to lead and ensure the safety and prosperity of our people and the world is to continue investing in defense. These investments benefit our regional and national economies, creating well-paying jobs. As I have said before, defense and security companies here in Halifax and right across Canada can be confident that we will continue with the investments that we laid out in Strong, Secure, and Engage, so that they can continue on with their work designing equipment investing in R&D, and hiring hardworking Canadians. COVID-19 changes none of those plans because investing in defense will be critical to Canada's post-COVID economic recovery. Canada's defense sector employs 283,000 people in stable, high-paying jobs and generates 15.2 billion Canadian dollars in GDP. Defense investments can yield important innovations that are not only good for our militaries, but for the whole world as well. Like the Canadian defense innovation that is contributing to the global COVID-19 response. In August, our scientists developed a coronavirus risk calculator. This online tool calculates the probabilities that one or more people in a given group are infected with COVID-19, but not showing symptoms. It takes into account group size, location, and timing, as well as the risk-reducing effects of testing and isolation. Now, we've shared this tool with federal, provincial, and territorial health officials and with the World Health Organization. Canada is also playing a key role in vaccine research, and several Canadian companies now have vaccines in clinical trials. We have announced $173 million through the Strategic Innovation Fund for Medicago, based in Quebec City, securing up to 76 million doses of their COVID-19 vaccine candidate. And we are investing up to $18.2 million in precision nanosystems from my hometown in Vancouver to help advance the development of a vaccine candidate through pre-clinical studies and clinical trials. What's more, the National Research Council of Canada Industrial Research Assistance Program is providing about $23 million to advance 6 COVID-19 vaccine candidates in various stages of clinical trials. One Canadian company in particular, Acutis Therapeutics, also located in Vancouver, designed a critical piece of nanotechnology in the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine that has shown promise in recent reports. Now that is good news, not just for Canadians, but for the world. And we can certainly use more of good news these days. As we think of the many challenges before us, let's use this year's HISIF to reinforce the importance of international cooperation. Let us reaffirm the value of the rules-based international order. Let us reassert how critical multilateralism remains. And with that, I look forward to hearing how we can confront the challenges of our time. I wish you all a great forum. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.